Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today feels like the perfect day to dive into a Bronte inspired drama. It's one of those classic Yorkshire days here. The wind is absolutely howling around the house, so excuse any noise. The sky is as grey and miserable, and honestly it's a day for hiding indoors, so we might lose our power. It's happened a few times, so fingers crossed. So what I did earlier is I downloaded Devotion onto my tablet, which is a 1946 Hollywood film about the Bronte family. A very loose Hollywood film about the Bronte family, I think I should say. The good news is I found it on YouTube, and if you guys want to watch it, I've put a link in the description below so you can watch it yourself. But before you do, let me just say that this film had me yelling at the screen within minutes. The inaccuracy, the melodrama, the interesting creative choices, I mean, it's all there. So if you're a Bronte fan or a lover of vintage films, or just enjoy a good rant at the screen like I did, grab yourself a cup of tea, settle yourself back, and let's get into it. So let's talk about the story, or shall I say the Hollywood, rather creative version of it in Devotion. The film attempts to give us the lives of the Brontes, but what we get is less historical drama and more sort of romantic soap opera, complete with a romantic triangle that would leave Jane Austen raising an eyebrow. The plot focuses on the three sisters, Charlotte, Emily and Anne, and their brother Branwell. But what can I say? Don't get too excited. If you're hoping for accuracy, there isn't any there. Emily is depicted as a broody poet wandering the moors, which is fair enough, Hollywood, well done. Charlotte is a fiery, ambitious trailblazer, determined to chase whatever or whoever she wants. And as for poor Anne, well, poor thing, she is there, kind of technically. Meanwhile, Branwell, the family troubled brother, drifts in and out, embodying the tortured artist with plenty of dramatic suffering. Again, to put it politely. And then there's Arthur Bell Nichols, their father's curator, who eventually did, in real life, marry Charlotte. But in Devotion, Arthur is sort of reimagined as the ultimate romantic prize, caught between the affections of both sisters, Charlotte and Emily. Yeah, I know. Emily, the woman who wrote Wuthering Heights, and I would say the most unlikely person interested in Arthur. Anyway, the whole thing feels like in 1946, someone sat down and said, how can we make the Brontes dramatic enough for the big screen? So the plot, I'd say it's a jumble of real people, wild inaccuracies, and yep, over the top Hollywood imagination. But it's a bit of a mess, but an entertaining one, especially if you're a Bronte fan who likes picking away at the fiction and shouting at the screen, like me. And I did a lot. So let's look at each character as portrayed in the film. Charlotte is kind of portrayed as, well, let's just say not her finest self. She comes across as petty and childish, and she's throwing tantrums whenever she doesn't get her own way. Honestly, it's an absolute miracle anyone in her life had the patience to put up with her, especially poor Arthur. Speaking of Arthur, the film has Charlotte constantly getting stroppy with him over absolutely everything. It is so funny. You can't help but feel sorry for the poor man, and he should have just sort of cut his losses and run, because it's just cringy. And then there's this scene in London where Charlotte is sharing a pint of beer with Thackeray. Yes, you heard that right. Charlotte Bronte, pint of beer, Thackeray. If you'd have asked me to imagine that scenario before watching the film, I would have absolutely laughed at you. But here we are. I have some more examples of some real toe-curling moments, but they're going to be shown a bit later on. The melodrama doesn't just stop there. In one particularly theatrical moment, Charlotte storms into Madame Edgar's room, short of breath and brimming with all this fury, only then to declare her love for her husband in what can only be described as this over-dramatic outburst. It's like she's taken lessons in making an entrance. And there's also another moment when she confesses to Thackeray that she hasn't actually read Wuthering Heights. I mean, can you imagine? And with all the timeline juggling this film does, things are constantly shifting around to keep the story moving along quickly and presumably to make it more entertainment. And a prime example, the moment Charlotte hands Arthur her manuscript of Jane Eyre before it's even been sent to any publishers. She was asking for his opinion as if she would ever do that. And somehow this manuscript is all very neat and bound and just wrong. I mean, it's peak Hollywood storytelling, and accuracy is nowhere to be seen. And we need to talk about her constant skirt swishing and her hair tossing. She's either stomping about, frustrated, or sweeping dramatically out of a room, or with a perfectly timed flick of her hair. If I had to sum her up in this version of Charlotte, it's that she spent most of the film in a bad mood. Now let's talk about Emily. In this version of events, she somehow ends up being the elder sibling, or at least that's how it feels. Everyone seems to turn to her for her thoughts and her opinions, as though she's this wise matriarch of the family. It's very strange. But then comes the real shocker. Emily is portrayed as chatty, sociable, and brace yourself, attending a ball. Yes, Hollywood Emily gets dressed up in lace and frills and ribbons and dances like she's auditioning for a part in Pride and Prejudice. It's unbelievable. Hollywood, you really outdid yourself this time. It's as if they thought, how can we make Emily Bronte not Emily Bronte? And the flirting, oh gosh, honestly, she flutters her eyelashes at poor Arthur like she's been practicing on unsuspecting curates for years. It's giving romantic lead, not reclusive writer of Wuthering Heights. And at one point, she even confesses her love to Arthur with a breathless voice and some hair swishing, clearly borrowed from Charlotte's dramatic playbook. The scriptwriters also threw in some dramatic dream sequences for Emily, which feels like a what do we do with her now moment in the writing room. And meanwhile, in one of the most outlandish scenes I've seen, Emily is reading Wuthering Heights, neatly bound, of course, because, it seems to be how it is, to Branwell on his so-called deathbed. Okay, I'm going to have to tell you about that later, because that is bizarre. And despite being ill with tuberculosis, Emily doesn't cough once, not even when she's on her deathbed/death chair. Truly a miraculous portrayal of TB there. I mean, maybe Hollywood thought coughing would sort of ruin the vibe. Who knows? And now we come to poor Anne. If only I had more to say about her, but unfortunately, in Devotion, Anne is treated more like an extra than one of the greatest novelists of the 19th century. Her character is reduced to this giggling, silly schoolgirl who pops up occasionally, presumably to remind us that there was actually a third Bronte sister. There's no mention of her novel, Agnes Grey, or The Tenant of Wildfell Hill. Apparently, it didn't make it for the cut in Hollywood. Though she does get to refer to her poetry at one point, but no one seems to take any notice and no one seems to care. It's as though the scriptwriters didn't quite know what to do with her. So they just kind of threw in a few... That's the dog. So they just threw in a few jolly moments to sort of break up the brooding and the melodrama. I mean, she deserves so much better. Shh, dog. And then we have Branwell. What a peculiar portrayal this is. He looks about 40, which feels a bit odd given that he's Charlotte's younger brother. But yeah, but let's roll with it. The film kicks off with some bizarre, unsettling flirting between him and his sisters, which is kind of cringeworthy enough. And it kind of makes you want to look away. But then when he's not attempting being scary and flirtatious, he is shouting, at his sisters, at the world, basically anyone within earshot. His drunken antics, meanwhile, are unintentionally comical. At one point, there's this very dramatic moment involving a horse, which I'm going to get to later because you really need to hear about it. Hollywood clearly couldn't resist throwing in such a strange moment. And then we come to Branwell's death. Sorry, that's the dog. Confusing doesn't even begin to describe it. One moment he's in the bed shouting at everyone like normal, looking perfectly healthy, not coughing, no visible signs of illness, just that usual volume turned up to 11. And then out of nowhere, he has this dramatic outburst and poof, he's gone. It's another classic Hollywood death scene full of drama, but very little logic. I'll break it down in more detail later because trust me, it is a spectacle worth revisiting. Then we get to Arthur Bell Nichols. Yes, in this film, he's quite the peculiar character, complete with this slight Irish accent that kind of wanders in and out like it's not quite sure where it's meant to be. One of the most unintentional funny moments come when he sees Emily properly for the first time, not in her night clothes, don't ask. His transformation is instant. He goes from this neutral face to this I've just fallen in love face, and it is so quick as well. Honestly, it's worth watching just for the sheer overacting alone. Arthur is portrayed as bold, confident, and not afraid to say exactly what he thinks. Usually it's done, though, to shock someone. He has a fist fight with Branwell during the same eventful evening that involves the horse drama. More on that later. So clearly it was a very big night for both of them. And let's not forget the moment in the conservatory with Charlotte. A scene so awkward it would make anyone want to just give him a good kick in the shins. Hollywood clearly wanted Arthur to be this romantic lead, but instead he just comes across as slightly baffling, with more drama than sense. And then there's Patrick Brontë, who is, well, not Irish. In this film, he spends his time either shouting at the sisters to sit down and be quiet, or turning to Charlotte for advice on what to do with the drunk Branwell. Patrick pops up at the beginning making this bit of noise and then kind of vanishes for most of the film, as if he's sort of gone off on a mini break with Aunt Branwell or something. Speaking of Aunt Branwell, she's surprisingly sprightly here, considering she died quite early on in real life. Anyway, she survives till the end credits. She occasionally pops in, makes her presence known, and then sort of promptly disappears again. I imagine she and Patrick were just off enjoying a quiet retreat somewhere far away from the chaos of the plot. And then there's Tabby, who gets about 3 minutes of screen time. She enters with this very peculiar accent that's impossible to place, says a few lines, and is never seen again. Truly a fleeting performance if ever there was one. But the real tragedy, in my opinion, is poor Keeper. Hollywood decided to transform him from the beloved Newfoundland into an old English sheepdog. Not only that, but he's been given a starring role as a sort of like lassie dog figure, barking at all the right moments and somehow managing to stay surprisingly clean despite living on the moors. Oh, poor Keeper, you deserve so much better. Oh, it wouldn't be a video without a cup of tea, would it really? I had this one going on the side for a little while now. It's quite strong though, which is quite nice. This one is a copy of the parsonage. I have a print of it and I love it. It's got all this gold detail, and it's by Kate Linsett. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I'm terrible with names, as you know. I'll put some information in the description below. Sorry, the camera's wobbling because the dog's now mooching. What you doing, doggy? What you doing? Can I say hello? It's a cable in the way and he's not happy. Hi. Do you want to say hello to everyone? Should we see you? There we are. Say hi. Hi. Look at the people. There you are. That's it. You have a good sniff at the camera. Oh, let's get comfy. By the way, this is Magnus. Anyway, my top 6 shouting at the screen moments. Number 1, Monsieur Edgar, or should I say, the creepy magician. Because in this film, he looks less like a respectable teacher and more like a magician who might saw someone in half and do it very badly. And to top it off, he's about 20 years too old for the role. There's a particular baffling moment in what I'm going to call the tunnel of mystery, okay? Picture a fairground ride where Edgar and Charlotte climb into a carriage, disappear into a dark tunnel, and re-emerge with hats askew, hair dishevelled, and hands, well, everywhere. It is so awkward. It's so cringeworthy, and it definitely deserved me shouting at the screen in horror. Number 2, the horse incident. Ah, yes, the horse moment you've been waiting for. So the 3 Bronte sisters are dressed up like prize-winning pigs, complete with lace and ribbons and, oh, the lot, you name it, to attend a ball. Yes, I know, the idea of them going to a ball is wild enough, but let's not dwell on that. Mind-blowing. Arthur is driving them in a carriage because, predictably, Branwell is down at the pub. Just as they're about to leave, Branwell stumbles out, can only be described as some of the most over-the-top drunk acting I've ever seen. He insists on driving the carriage, climbs aboard, and then when Arthur refuses, he leaps onto the back of the horse. Cue the poor horse rearing up dramatically as Branwell tumbles to the ground. The sisters start screaming, Arthur is fuming, and the horse looks like it's had enough with everyone. But of course, once the horse is galloping down the road, Charlotte insists they turn the carriage round to fetch poor Branwell. It's all very dramatic and entirely unnecessary. Number 3, Branwell's death scene featuring torrential rain and drama. This scene had me yelling loud enough to frighten the neighbours. After what feels like ages of Branwell shouting from his deathbed, we learn that Charlotte and Emily have apparently rushed home from Brussels. Okay, this is where it gets weird, because according to Hollywood, Anne sent them a letter saying Branwell was ill. Despite history saying Aunt Branwell was dying on her deathbed, no, Aunt Branwell's perfectly fine throughout this whole film. Anyway, Branwell gets refused a drink, storms out into the rainstorm, and Emily, without so much as a shore, follows him. She finds him dramatically curled up, leaning against a wall, where they have this over-emotional speech and chat and everything, before he literally dies in her arms, soaking wet, of course. I mean, it's a classic Hollywood melodrama at its peak, and just so wrong. Number 4, the fight, snow, fists, and embarrassment. During the infamous ball, where apparently every gentleman in town falls over himself to dance with the Bronte sisters, Branwell shows up, making a complete fool of himself. Arthur, trying to be the knight in shining armour, tries to drag him home, but instead they end up having this very bizarre fist fight in the snow, right in front of all the guests. Naturally, the Brontes fret about Branwell, while Arthur is left looking completely ridiculous yet again. because nothing says Hollywood drama like a fistfight in formal wear. Number 5, Charlotte goes to London, but Anne's stuck at home. Charlotte heads to London to meet her publisher, leaving poor Anne behind, presumably because Hollywood decided her role didn't warrant more dialogue. Who knows? Instead of discussing her book with a publisher, like we know she did, Charlotte spent most of her time gallivanting around town with Thackeray in his carriage. In one especially bizarre moment, thank you watch, she asks Thackeray to take her to the East End. This is where we see the most cliched Dickens children you've ever seen. And who does she find there? Arthur Bell Nichols, of course, who has somehow wound up working in that exact part of London. Convenient, isn't it? Bizarre. Number 6, the baffling love triangle. Finally, we come to the film's pièce de résistance, the love triangle. There's lots of inexplicable flirting between Arthur and both Charlotte and Emily. Charlotte decides she won't fall for Arthur after discovering, in London no less, that Emily has feelings for him, because clearly this film has never met historical accuracy. And of course, Emily's heartbreak is so severe that she dies from it. Forget TB, this is heartache. Once Emily is out of the picture, it suddenly seems all systems go for Charlotte and Arthur. Who needs facts when you can write a Hollywood script like this? Oh! So the music in this film is terrible. Branwell looks like he's just stepped straight out of a pantomime, and Charlotte is downright annoying. The costumes are hopelessly inaccurate, and I still can't get over poor Keeper being transformed into a completely different breed of dog. But we need to consider when this was made. In 1943, when the film was shot, though it wasn't released until 1946, the Second World War was at its height. America had joined the Allies, much to Britain's relief, but not all Americans were thrilled about it, which I can understand. There was this strong boost to push morale and portray Britain as this charming, picturesque land worth fighting for. Hollywood, as always, was ready to help sell this vision. Filmmakers leaned into the idea of this chocolate box villages and British period drama to sort of promote this quaint, idolised image of the UK. I mean, this film, while delayed by contract issues with Charlotte Bronte's actress, was part of that effort. Its aim wasn't historical accuracy, but rather to capture hearts and build solidarity and provide escapism during these dark times. So yes, I may laugh at this film, shout at it even, but I can't ignore the good intentions behind it. I might criticise it for its many historical blunders, but I did enjoy watching it, if only it was to spot all the slip-ups. But if you get a chance to watch it, let me know your thoughts. What was your best and worst moments, and what made you shout at the screen like I was doing for most of the day? A lovely family meal, and then Charlotte says, what's that, Charlotte?
Haworth.
Sorry, Charlotte, what was that?
Haworth.
Haworth? Do you mean Haworth? Here is Emily and Arthur on the moors picking berries. How sweet. I think Emily has something important to say.
Haworth.
Did Charlotte teach you that? Say it again.
Haworth.
You mean Haworth, not Haworth. I had to show you a little more of some of the costumes. Here we have the Bronte sisters prancing about getting ready for the ball. I mean, can you imagine them ever doing that in real life? And then we have Emily and Charlotte dressed up like nurses. Or it was meant to be the uniform while they're in Brussels. And here's a glimpse of the parsonage, or at least how Hollywood think the parsonage looked like. This is Magnus Pike, the cushion. I will have to put an explanation up because... Look, my head's nearly coming off. It's not very flattering, is it? Edgar. Arthur, trying to be the white and shining arm. The white? Look. I'm going to do that. Number 6, the baffling love triangle bit again. But not all Americans were thrilled by it. And I'm not thrilled by this. I'm not doing well. Thank you for joining me as I chat about this film. I've absolutely loved making this video today. It's completely different from my usual content, but sometimes we just need that little bit of light relief. If you've enjoyed this video, please do that whole likey, subscribey thing, because it really does help me out and it lets YouTube know that we want to watch more Bronte content. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week for more Bronte adventures. The power's stayed on, hurrah! And I feel like if I had long hair, I would be flicking it at this moment, because that's all they did in the film, lots of head flicking. Anyway, see you next Friday. Bye!